All right. Well, hello. Welcome to our Wednesday podcast for our James study as we continue to go through it. Been a good week here. We're getting ready for Thanksgiving, and we have our Heritage Dinner on Sunday. Hopefully, you'll be involved in that and come out, eat with us, and fellowship. And it's as we talk about Thanksgiving, but we're also still in the fruit of the Spirit as we talk about gentleness on Sunday and how that needs to be added to our life. And now more than ever, we are seeing the results of this and the negativity that goes along with not having the fruit of the Spirit and not excelling in them in our own Christian lives and how it's made Christianity look bad. So we are doing our best to work through that series. And then, of course, our Advent will be starting soon. And Christmas will be hitting it on. So we have our Hanging of the Greens the Sunday following Thanksgiving. And then obviously we'll start Advent the first week of December. And then we are rolling into Christmas, which, I mean, all of us are like, everyone I talk to says, wow, how the time has flown this year. And that is 100% true. But we will not be having a podcast next week as a result of Thanksgiving. So we won't have the Bible studies or any of that kind of stuff going on next week. We not all the food programs are canceled. I think the only one we're looking at is the Saturday food one. We're still undecided whether or not they want us to make lunches for the homeless and whether they're even open. A lot of times around the holidays, people get very giving, and so they they make them turkey dinners, or they bring their leftovers or other things like that. So the homeless don't necessarily have such a big need around the holidays as they do the rest of the year when everyone stops being generous. And so I don't know. We'll keep you updated though. We'll let you know how it goes and if you can be involved in that. But this weekend they are making them Saturday. We are working on the ministry center again this Saturday. Hopefully in the morning. Hopefully we get some more done on it uh, with the things that are going on there. And so if you can be part of it, come on out. And then Sunday, of course, our Heritage Dinner, our Thanksgiving celebration. We do trace our heritage back to the Pilgrims. The first denomination in America or association was Congregationalism. So we are the oldest in America, and we trace our history back there. And we have enjoyed celebrating that history and what it's meant for our country, and some of the things exactly like Thanksgiving. There's more to it than that, but definitely the Thanksgiving celebration that we enjoy today is a direct result of congregational churches coming together and the Pilgrims and continuing that tradition of the first Thanksgiving. And so come out on Sunday and help us to enjoy that. But we are in the book of James now, dealing with wisdom. And so we're in James 3:13 through 18. And I'm going to read it for you, and then we'll discuss the details of it. And it wraps out James chapter 3, but it says, and when it talks about true wisdom from God, if you are wise and understanding God's ways, provide it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy, selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above, first of all, is pure. It is also peace, loving, and gentle at all times. We're going to be dealing with that verse on Sunday with the word gentle in it. Willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. So we're going to look right now at the book of James when it talks about actual wisdom. Uh, they always talk about around Christmas time the wise men, and we get the term wise guy from that, which wise guy is not the um, same as wise man, but we hear that joke all the time at Christmas. Someone will say, "Oh, you're a wise guy, eh?" And I think it was the Three Stooges who made it very popular. Uh, but James is actually going to deal with wisdom and what makes someone wise. Uh, I'm sure you've sat in a crowd surrounded by someone who really seems to know what he was talking about, someone whose every word was apparently accepted as absolute truth. And there's many times like that where you sit and you hear an expert on something, right? And you realize they're very wise on the subject. We can be wise too when we look at James 3:13 through 18. So although you may not consider yourself an expert on nuclear physics or something like that, physicist, nuclear physicist, something like that. Obviously, I'm wonderful at pronouncing that word, but you'll find yourself with wisdom on other things that are truly life changing. So we'll start in verse 13, where James begins, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, his works, his meekness, and wisdom." We suggested at the start of this previous lesson that in this chapter, James is primarily directing his attention to public teachers of the word. The chapters begin with these words, "Be not many of you teachers." We further suggested, however, that James was not trying to discourage any from being teachers, Matthew 28:18 through 20, or even public teachers, Ephesians 4:11, but rather was trying to discourage individuals from becoming teachers for wrong motivations and without proper preparation. We noted the high respect teachers generally commanded in both the Jewish and Christian communities, and thus the temptation to want the position of being a teacher without paying the price in preparation. This ties in directly with verse 13 as James asks, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" The term wise man was often used in the scriptures to refer to one who was a teacher, Luke 10:21, 1 Corinthians 1:20, etc. Understanding was also used to describe the sharer of information. Robertson, in his word pictures of the New Testament, gives the two Greek words involved and then says that in this context, the first is used for the practical teacher and the second for an expert, a skilled and scientific person with a tone of superiority. So James is asking, who among you makes the claim of being wise and skillful teacher, an expert in their field? Let me pause right here to stress that all these qualities are good and most needed. We need wise and skilled teachers, some experts. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore, get wisdom. With all thy getting and understanding, Proverbs 4:7. But the context shows, as already suggested, that these wanted to be considered as wise, skillful, expert teachers without really being such. In the previous chapter, James has challenged his readers to show their faith by their works, to give a practical demonstration. Now, that same challenge is given to those who profess to be wise and understanding. Let him show by the good life his works and the meekness of his wisdom. The world has many tests for wisdom. There's the IQ test that measures several aspects of ability and intelligence. I don't know if you've ever taken that test. Uh, there's a paper test, how many degrees you may or may not have. I have degrees on my walls, which people would say, well, you've studied and you've learned. There's a verbal test, which you can demonstrate a shrewd mind by your sharp tongue and ready wit. But James says, actually, probably the better of me. But James says that the test that matters is the life test. Can you show by your good life that you are truly wise? In the verses that follow, James will give many practical ways to tell if our wisdom is genuine or not. But one thing is mentioned immediately. Did you notice this phrase at the end of verse 13? Let him show by his good life his works in meekness of wisdom. The one James is addressing were apparently arrogant with their claims to superiority. James says that those who are truly wise are meek. Meekness is not weakness. Meek is the word Greeks use to refer to a horse that has been broken to ride. It's significant, harnessed, and directed strength. One writer calls it gentle strength, which we'll talk about on Sunday. It is closely related to humility and then even translated as humility in the NIV. The truly wise person has nothing to prove to the world. He can be meek, humble, and unassuming. In verse 14, James says, "Glory not and lie not against the truth." In plain terms, stop bragging about being a teacher and stop lying about how great you are. Instead of bragging about your wisdom, prove you are wise by the life that you live. Today, we might say, put up or shut up. In verse 14, James says, "Glory not and lie not against the truth." In plain terms, stop bragging about being a teacher and stop lying. But how does one show that he is wise? To make clear that true wisdom really is, James spends the remainder of the passage contrasting true wisdom and wisdom, so called, the same kind of contrast is made by Paul in 1 Corinthians. So basically, he's saying this: if you're truly wise, right, you'll live a life of true wisdom and prove that you are wise by the way that you live. And if you're out there bragging about how great you are, you're really not applying wisdom to your life. Humility is the greatest way to live. And so we see that, and we see what Paul is saying in 1 Corinthians, for the word of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us who are saved is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and discernment of the discerning will I bring to naught. Where there is wise, where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of the world? Hath not God made the foolish the wisdom of the world? This thought is on man's wisdom versus God's wisdom. They're not always the same. The wisdom of the world may count things of eternal importance as more foolishness, and thus show itself to be the most foolish. Sometimes the smartest individual in the room is an atheist, right? And we've heard people that they understand numbers like nobody else, but they believe God doesn't exist, right? So spiritual wisdom and earthly wisdom don't always line up. So let's look at the wisdom of the world in 14 through 16. 3 points of contrast are given: origin, characteristic, and results. Note first the origin of this wisdom. This wisdom, says James, is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. This is the wisdom so called that which poses as wisdom but is not. Today we would put the word wisdom in quotation marks. This wisdom is not from above, not from God, but rather earthly, sensual, and devilish. Earthly, it is of the earth, not of heaven, and intellectually it is centered on this life. Sensual, it appeals to the flesh, to the natural man. This helps explain its popularity. It justifies men in much that they say just naturally want to do. And devilish, literally meaning demonic, which is the NLT, it ties are with Satan and its cohort. This description strips away the layers of much that parades as wisdom and lays bare the true source. James first charges your wisdom only has limited value, for it is centered in the world. Quite right. The worldly wise nods, but after all, that is all there is. So James' second charge comes. It is counted as wisdom by men only because it justifies them living on the level of animals. Now, the worldly wise bristles. Now, don't start blaming me for the world's problems, but James has one last layer to remove, one last change to make. As a matter of fact, the real genius behind your twisted logic, your half truths, your learned perversions are the demons of hell itself, who are using your so called wisdom to turn men from God's wisdom and to send them to their own eternal abode. You see, Satan will convince people there is no God so that they will sell that only smart people don't believe in God. And they'll tell you that, right? We hear this all the time with creation. Well, evolution can't be because there's some really smart scientists out there that believe that evolution is true. And so some Christians cave on that, but that's not what God is encouraging us to do. Man's earthly wisdom will always direct you away from God, not to God. And if the best way to live on this planet is God, the best wisdom to apply is what God gives you, then obviously Satan would push you away from that. He hates God. So then everything that you will see will line up into one of two categories. Either it will push you towards God or away from God. The wisdom of the world will always push you away from God. It will cater to your sensual desires, and it's from the devil. But you'll always find that God's wisdom always is better for you. But what is wisdom that is earthly, sensual, or devilish? It is that which is not true wisdom, but poses as wisdom by using the designation of wisdom. The Greek word for wisdom is sophos, which has become part of our vocabulary in some very common words. There is, for instance, the word philosophy. This is a combination of two Greek words, phileo, love of, and sophos, which is wise. It indicates a love of wisdom, the philosophy of life. Then there is the word sophisticated, directly derived from sophos, or wise. Again, this is a word whose root meaning is not necessarily bad. Certainly, it represents the goal of many men and women, but the connotations of the word are all bad. The dictionary gives the primary meaning of the word as worldly wise, deprived of natural simplicity, disillusioned. The secondary meaning is uh, pretentiously wise, possessing superficial information. Look at these phrases again: worldly wise, um, or disillusioned, depraved of natural simplicity. Is this not practically a synonym for the wisdom that the earth is earthly and sensual? As I read these words, my mind conjures up a vision of elegant men and women blessed with physical possessions, having the time and opportunity to learn the social graces, but who are bored with it all and who are therefore always looking for some new experience from whatever source to stimulate their jaded appetites as they look down their elegant noses at the masses who lack their sophistication. I'm talking about those who are smart but not wise, who have been polished surface but no depth, formed have no substance, who have reputations but no character, manners but no morals, manicured hands but calloused hearts. I'm sure most of us could profitably learn a few more of our social graces, but let us never forget the warnings of Paul in 2 Corinthians 11:3. But I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve in his craftiness, your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity and the purity that is towards Christ. But as we are considering words related to the Greek word for wise, the word that probably comes closest to what James is talking about is the word sophistry. The word is also derived directly from sophos or wise, but it took on a certain meaning through the years because of the Greek sophists who paraded as wise men, but who used logic and reasoning to their own ends. Thus, the dictionary defines sophistry as subtly fallacious or deceptive, reasoning or disposition. So, in the long term, a long time ago, Satan told Eve, loosely paraphrasing, "Oh, you won't die. God is just trying to scare you off because he knows that if you ever eat of the forbidden fruit, you'll be as smart as he is. And he doesn't want the competition, nothing but lies." But they sounded wise, and sin came into the world. Satan still has his subtle lies posing as wisdom, and people still believe them because they want to. Here's a typical sampling. It's okay to do it. Everybody else is. If it feels good, do it. It can't be wrong if it feels so right. You should be allowed to do anything you want to. After all, it's your life and you're not hurting anyone else. Why are people always trying to change you? You are just the way you are and can't do anything about it. Those old fogies just don't understand that times have changed. We're not living back in the Victorian age or the Dark Ages anymore. Just be honest and sincere. God can't expect any more than that. We see those are all examples of what we're talking about. As I think of Sophos words, however, ultimately I come to sophomore and sophomoric without intending discredit to any second year high school student present. Let me note that sophomore comes from two Greek words, sophos, wise, and moros, foolish, the word from which you get moron. Here is the accurate designation for any display of wisdom that forgets God and the will of God. Sophomoric as foolish wisdom or wise foolishness, take your pick. This is the wisdom that is earthly or sensual, devilish wisdom, so called. But now, what are the characteristics of this kind of wisdom? The characteristics of this wisdom are found in verse 14. But if you have bitter jealousy and faction in your heart, glory not, lie not against the truth. First of all, this wisdom is jealous. The word translated jealousy can be used in either a good sense, 2 Corinthians 7 and Galatians 1:14, or as a bad one, James 4, 5, 1 Corinthians 3:3, Galatians 5:20, Romans 13:13. In this context, it is obviously James has in mind the bad sense. This is bitter jealousy. Why should this be listed first in the characteristics of worldly wisdom? It is first because worldly wisdom promotes self interest. Man has dethroned God in his life and enthroned himself. What I want is the important thing. Any means to get me there are legitimate. Therefore, if someone has something I want, it is only natural that I should be filled with consuming jealousy that produces a bitterness in my mouth, my stomach, and my soul. None of us are immune from the poison of jealousy, whether we be the little boy who asks his parents to take his baby brother back where he came from, or whether we be the aging executive passed over for promotion. The late J. Edgar Hoover once said that jealousy is among the top 10 reasons for doing wrong. Satan says you have a right to be jealous. After all, you deserve that honor, not him or her. Never forget that all this is wisdom is earthly, sensual, and devilish. The next characteristic continues the idea that the wisdom of the world is self-centered. The Greek word referred to the condition of the heart of the one who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. one who would not hesitate to stir up trouble if he thought it would help his cause. The King James translates the word as strife, the ASV as faction, the RSV and others as selfish ambition. As I studied on the meaning of the words associated with worldly wisdom, was struck with the frequency from which the word politics came into the definition. For instance, the word under discussion was used by the Greeks in classical Greek to describe a politician out canvassing for votes. Thus, one writer says that in the first two characteristics of worldly wisdom, we have a combination of selfish ambition and party spirit, the attitude that says promote yourself by any means and try to line up everybody on your side. I would not want him to fall in the trap already discussed of saying all politicians are crooked, but perhaps the type of campaign run by certain types of politicians can illustrate what James is talking about. But more to the point, is it possible that we have at one time or another succumbed to Satan's wisdom and have caused strife and trouble by trying to line up people as for us and against us? Is it even possible that churches have been divided by men whose feelings have been hurt and who want to know who will stand behind me? Devilish wisdom still lives on. Third, is this wisdom is boastful. The last part of verse 14 commands glory not and lie not against the truth. Although I earlier tied these words to verse 13, it will not be out of the way to think of these as suggestive or two more characteristics. The command begins glory not. The RSV has do not boast. To boast of one's affairs or to hurt of another. That ties with the characteristics already noted. If one is guided by worldly wisdom, he will be self-centered, envious of the success of others, and selfish ambition to promote his own cause. What more natural way to do this than by boasting? And how natural, while we are boasting, to run down others to make ourselves look even better. All the time, Satan is saying, but after all, if you don't toot your own horn, no one else is going to toot it. Does this make you think of political commercials you have heard, or to make personal applications? Does this make us think of any boasting or running down of others we may have done lately? Fourth, it is deceitful. Finally, James says in this verse, lie not against the truth. When the self-seeking, ambitious man begins to boast, first, facts are exaggerated, then half truths or selective truths appear, and finally he gets down to what Grandma called bold-faced lies. As an illustration of this, I again say watch the deterioration of some political campaigns as time nears for elections. I like a recent article by Senator Robert C. Byrd on this point. He noted that if TV mouthwash commercials are not truthful, they are pulled off the air, but political commercials can apparently say whatever they please. He noted that political advertising should be scrutinized just as hard as mouthwash commercials for lies, misstatements, and other excessive claims. Is it possible that we fall for the wisdom of the world, that we get sold on the idea that success is everything? I must make the team. I have to be asked out by the most attractive person. I must have a house as nice as my friends. I must have the nicest car. I must have everything as I claw my way to the top. And if we sell ourselves so cheaply, that is the end result. Listen to verse 60. For where envying and faction are, there is confusion, and every evil deed, envying and faction, those are the characteristics of self-centeredness we have just talked about. And in what does this earthly wisdom result? The text gives two fruits. First, there is confusion. The word translated confusion is a hard word to translate. It refers to disorder that comes from instability. It comes from the same root as the word unstable in 1:8. I can't really improve on the general word confusion. Second, there is a cheapness. The King James then refers to every evil work. Some who are self-seeking will literally stop at nothing to accomplish their evils. But the word evil here is not confined to that which is obviously evil or ungodly. The ASV and RSV use the word vile instead of evil. The Greek word refers to that which is cheap, gaudy, or worthless. This includes immorality, but also refers to the cheap, valueless things which the worldly wise must fill their lives. Do you want a commentary on the meaning of these words? Just look at the world around you. You will see a world that is largely influenced by worldly wisdom, by worldly philosophy, by worldly sophistication, accepting the sophistics of Satan. And what is the result? Confusion and every vile deed. Confusion, disorder, immorality, cheapness, and emptiness. But again, let us try to make personal applications. Those of us who are teachers, and in one way or another, that should take in every Christian, need to check the results of our teaching. Elders used to check the results of this teaching and preaching for which they are responsible. If the results are not what is desired, then there might be something wrong with the teaching. The wisdom from above, in verse 17 and 18, James says, "But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without variance and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace for them that make peace." Again, we note 3 points of contrast between wisdom and the so-called true wisdom. First, notice the origin of the true wisdom. The wisdom of the world is earthly, sensual, and devilish, but true wisdom is from above. This brings to mind a verse already studied, but if you have any that lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. James 1:5. How can you be wise with the wisdom that counts? First of all, you must stay close to God and his word. But next, what are the characteristics of this wisdom? From above, the wisdom of the world is jealous, self-centered, boastful, deceitful, in contrast. Our text gives 7 characteristics of true wisdom. James, Jewish readers would have been familiar with the number 7, signifying perfection or completeness. First of all, the wisdom from above is pure. That wisdom from above is first pure. The word pure literally means unmixed. In other words, it does not have some good and some bad. It refers to a singleness of purity. Notice that this purity is to be first pure, then peaceably, and so on. There are those who believe in peace at any price, that there is no higher purpose than living at peace with all men. But James says that purity must be first on the list. Some think of themselves as peacemakers when in reality they have signed a non-aggression pact with the devil. Peace that is procured by sacrificing one's convictions on the plain teaching of God's word can never have the approval of God. The wisdom that is from above is first pure. But then following closely is the quality of being peaceably. The wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceful. It is unfortunate there are those who have exalted peace above purity. It is also unfortunate that some who proclaim their desire for doctrine and moral purity have not learned how to be peaceable in it. In the days past, the battle cry for purity has been used to justify for everything from the Spanish Inquisition to splitting churches over matters of opinion. It is not sufficient to have the message of God if we have the manner of Satan. Most have heard of the great black preacher now gone to his reward, Marshall Keeble. Marshall Keeble pulled no punches in the preaching. He called names, he denounced sin, but he did so in love. One day during the invitation, a man came storming down the aisle. When he reached Brother Keeble, he hit him with a blow that knocked him over the communion table. He then spit in Keeble's face. Brother Keeble pulled out his handkerchief and began wiping his face. He looked up at the man and said, "I wish I could wipe the hatred from your heart and the sin from your life as easily as I can wipe the spittle from my face." The man broke down in tears. Before the evangelistic effort was over, he was baptized into Christ. Paul gave us this challenge in Romans 12:18. If it be possible, as much as you live, be at peace with all men. Paul knew that it was not possible to live at peace with all, but he challenged us to do our best. Blessed are the peacemakers, said Jesus, for they should be called sons of God. The third quality of wisdom from above is gentleness. Men who have the wisdom from above will be, in the true sense of the word, gentlemen. And women who have wisdom from above will be gentle women. But what is this thing called gentleness? Unfortunately, gentleness is not greatly sought after today, especially among men. The Greek word translated gentle in the King James is a hard word to define. The NIV translated it as considerate. The Amplified Bible uses 3 words to translate it: courteous, considerable, or gentle. We'll be talking a lot more about this on Sunday. The fourth quality of wisdom from above is described in the words in the King James, easy to be entreated. It is open. The Greek, which is found nowhere else in the New Testament, is translated by the RSV, open to reason. In the Amplified Bible, willing to yield to reason. The one who has true wisdom does not think that there is nothing left for him to learn. The good teacher remains teachable. I am calling this being open. Having an open mind and an open heart. Some mistake stubbornness for conviction and closed mind for consistency. The most important application of this quality is our relationship with God. We must remain open to his will. In secular writings, the Greek phrase here referred to the soldiers ready to obey, asking no questions when applied to our attitude toward God. This quality could be summarized by words like yielding, submissive, and obedient. But I believe this quality is also important in our relationship with other people. This was probably in the minds of the King James translators when they wrote easy to be entreated. The truly wise person does not leave the impression that he knows it all. Rather, he remains open to suggestion, instruction, even criticism. Proverbs 9:8 bears this out. Reprove not a scoffer, lest he hate thee. Reprove a wise man, he will love thee. Perhaps a good summary word here would be the word approachable. The truly wise person is open first and foremost to God, but also to others. Next, the wisdom that is from above is merciful, full of mercy and good fruits. This is generally considered a single quality of mercy, being the motivation and good fruits the result. This relates to James' earlier statement. There is no way that one can separate mercy and good fruits. Mercy refers to the capacity to be moved by the needs of others. Since the wisdom from above is not self-centered, it has the capacity, but it is true mercy. It will always result in good fruits. As we actually try to help those who are in need, it is not enough to talk about being a good neighbor. As did the lawyer, we must be willing to be a good neighbor, as was the Samaritan. Let me pause here to stress that true mercy does not take into account the worthiness of one in need. Mercy is closely related to grace, an unmerited favor. We have a lot of people in our culture that are trying to find uh, a reason to help people and a reason to not help people. God doesn't ask us to find the reason. Yeah, there are always going to be people who take advantage of a good thing, but mercy is giving it with unmerited favor. So, in other words, you're giving knowing that they don't necessarily need it, but you're giving, and God blesses the giving part of that. The ASV translates the sixth quality as without variance. It is consistent. Impartiality is an open characteristic. James has much to say in chapter 2 against partiality and prejudice. This is the opposite of the confusion that results from worldly wisdom. This is the characteristic of a truly wise person who knows what he believes and knows why he believes it, and who lives in the manner consistent with those beliefs, completely dedicated to the Lord and completely fair in dealing with others. A few minutes ago, I noted that some think they have convictions when really they just have closed minds. On the other hand, there are those who think they have open minds when in reality they are merely gullible, lacking real stability, accepting almost anything. They are described as Paul, as children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men and craftiness, Ephesians 4:14. It is not easy to have strong convictions and still remain open to reason, but the truly wise person has achieved that balance. Thus, he is able to be at peace with himself because he lives the consistent life. The final characteristic given by James ties in with consistency. The wisdom from above is without hypocrisy, it is sincere. This is not so with true wisdom. The word hypocrisy originally referred to wearing a mask, as actors did in plays in those days. Some who wanted the position and prestige of being public teachers wore the mask of wisdom and understanding and expertise. But those who were truly wise needed no such pretense. They had paid the price in preparation of the heart, preparation of the life, preparation of the mind, preparation of skills. They were precisely what they appeared to be. They were without hypocrisy. Would you be truly wise? Then strive to develop the seven qualities in your life. The last contrast between the wisdom of this world and the wisdom from above is the result. After giving the characteristic of the wisdom from above, James says, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace for them it that make peace. The fruit of earthly wisdom is confusion and every vile deed. The fruit of heavenly wisdom is righteousness. In this context, righteousness refers to a good life. It means basically the same as the good behavior spoken of in verse 13. If one is truly wise, the result will be beautiful, God pleasing life. James expresses this thought by using it as an illustration he has used before, that of sowing seed. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace for them that make peace. First, notice that sowers are them that make peace, as already noted. The truly wise man is peace loving and a peacemaker. Second, the proper growing conditions is peace. Righteousness is sown in peace. Proper growing conditions are necessary to the germination and growth of a seed. Planted in fertile soil and given rain and sunshine, a seed will grow. Plant that seed in dry, lifeless soil, and the seed remains lifeless. Even so, righteousness cannot grow where there is confusion and every evil work. But in the atmosphere of peace with God and man, righteousness can thrive. Third, the seed planted in righteousness itself. At first glance, the passage strikes us as peculiar. The fruit of the righteousness is sown, We do not think of planting fruit, we plant seeds. So some translations add the word seed to the verse, but the original text reads basically like the King James translation. The fruit is sown, but think for just a moment in plants that bear fruit. Where is the seed usually to be found? It is found in the fruit. In fact, in some cases, and in planting potatoes in order to plant the seed, we eventually plant the fruit. So, what is the point? Like begets, like one person living a righteous life will inspire others to live righteous lives. Fourth, the fruit produces is righteousness, a life that produces peace, uplifts men, and pleases God. How America needs this quality today. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Proverbs 14:34. But what is the source of righteousness? The source is not the philosophies of men, for they will only result in confusion and every evil work. Righteousness, rather, comes by confirming to the will of God, by studying God's word and obeying it, coming to see things as God sees them. All right, let us pray. Lord, we thank you for an opportunity to stop and learn about wisdom. We learn that it produces wonderful qualities in our life like peace and righteousness. And we also know what man's wisdom produces chaos in our lives. We see the chaos in our country. We see the chaos in the lives of people around us who follow worldly wisdom. But we also see the other side, the peace and all the things that go along with righteous living for someone who applies that wisdom. May we be called people of wisdom. May we apply wisdom that the word tells us to how to live. May we apply it to our lives and actually prove we are wise by living it out. In Jesus' name, amen. We'll see you on Sunday.